Emergencies Act. I mean, we got Manitoba now saying they're going to send PPE away, even some nurses to help out, and that kind of thing. And we know people are being moved to ICU units. London's Hospital, Windsor-Essex have also been alerted that Torontonians will be coming in, flying in via Orange.
He's sure that some
all right, let's start with Chris and Muskoka first off here on the Open Show. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, and there's no snow in Muskoka, my friend. So there you go. Okay.
All right, well, you guys, God bless them. We're supposedly getting some later on tonight in the morning. Go ahead.
Anyways, the only thing I have is, in all honesty, I know paid sick days are needed, but the federal government
is considered correct in Canadian English.
To be quite honest with you, I'm tired of paying out of my pocket, and enough is enough, right? I'm a contractor.
You're using a Rogers phone, aren't you?
If you're sick, stay home. If I was sick, I'd stay home. My boss actually, I'm a contractor, like I said, he pre-screens me. I have to call him every morning if I have any COVID symptoms, so,
Yeah, but here's my understanding. If it's paid sick days, if it's only temporary, it's something that the government would reimburse to you. Then the question is, should the government then put the bill on the feds, which, is just a shell game because there's only one taxpayer. But if it weren't up to you to pay, and I don't know, I mean, you're a small employer, you say, you don't have paid sick days right now, then I take it.
No.
And so how many employees do you have?
I have 17 employees.
Okay. In the event that they're ill,
you all share one
you tell them to stay home, and they don't get any kind of compensation for doing that.
Well, if I'm not there, what happens is they call my other employee that works for me. He just pre-screens them and stuff like that, and then they have to stay home, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, but they're not paid for staying home, right?
No.
Well, see, therein lies the dilemma, because some people are feeling, geez, if I don't go to work, I don't get paid, and I got to pay rent, I got to pay for food, so I've got the sniffles, but the hell, I'm going into work anyway, and this is where the transmission happens. That's at least the way the model works. So how do we benefit? I mean, if he infects or she infects the rest of your 16 employees?
Well, the biggest thing, like you just mentioned, if we send the money to the federal government, make them pay. They're not going to pay because they're sending money out of the country all the time. So they're not going to pay that. My employees, I treat them pretty well, pretty respectful sort of thing. So, I really try to help them out where I can. And, if I know somebody's short of something, or if they need some extra hours, or if they need to use the vehicle, I've always been like that with them. So.
Right. We're talking about a special set of circumstances here. I get it. I mean, you'll fill the gaps if they need this, that, or the other, but we're talking about a sickness being transmitted, and it's got serious consequences. How do we nip that in the bud at a level that you're working at?
Well, the aspect of pre-screening, first of all, helps.
Do you do any pre-screening at your place of work?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. Well, no, that's an answer. I mean, do you buy the kits then to test, or how do you come by the test?
Not also the kits. We also pre-screen by asking if they have any of the symptoms. If they do have any of the symptoms, we try to get them to stay home, in which they do stay home, right? So, and then they'll go and get tested. Then they have to wait 48 hours, right, for the results. So.
Right, but in the meantime, they're not being paid. So this is the incident that I guess would be a test case or a model that, you've got people like Andrea Horvath, Jagmeet Singh all saying, and the unions, and now even the advisory table, if these people were paid, they would take it upon themselves to stay home. Or do you think that they would abuse that system?
I think you'd see a lot more people stay home, and not possibly just due to being possibly COVID, I think for other reasons.
So they'd exploit this opportunity to stay home. Okay. Well, no, I've got to move on. I got your points, Chris. I mean, this is where it comes into.
Ask him about the Rogers thing, because he's obviously got one of their phones.
Your honest appraisal of the situation. Let me get to Tom in Hamilton. Hello, Tom. Your turn. Open show. Good afternoon.
How you doing, John? I'll try to be quick here, but there's, like the paid sick days. There are all other alternatives, and there are some major companies out there who would and may have to go to the shareholders. Yes, something, we're going to have to do this right now, but they can afford to pay for this time off, whether it's going to get a vaccination or whether it's being sick or anything else. They can afford to do this. Maple Leaf, Cargill Foods, Ford, Chrysler, GM, there's a bunch of out there. They can afford, Amazon can afford to cover at least 2 weeks' pay. Employees could use their holidays right now on a temporary basis. There could be arrangements made as this employer. This person said you could bank your overtime in case, not just now, but for down the road, you could bank some of your overtime to cover some lost time in case of an emergency. There's lots of alternatives here. You could use the CERB as part of that, but you would only get a percentage of that CERB to cover the period of time that you're off. It will be abused. It's abused now in certain workplaces that when people have paid sick time. They're called mental health days. Someone doesn't want to come into work, I'll take a mental health day, and if I get paid for it, I will. They don't have to show a doctor's note for it.
Some workplaces have rooms to take naps in.
The root cause analysis of how this variant and viruses got here is because due to travel, global travel. Global leaders across this world aren't going to close their airports, but we certainly can. And I understand why Trudeau hasn't acted upon stopping air travel into Canada, where it's 1%, 2%, 0.5%. How else are you going to stop something from coming into the country if it's coming in through travel?
Well, let me just work backwards. Some countries have imposed an international travel ban. In fact, New Zealand won't even allow their own citizens to come back into the country if they've been away a while. That's the more extreme example. But to the point you're making is some of these employers, they can well afford to do it. I'm guessing there are a lot of employers who do have sick day programs.
Even the provincial and federal government employees get covered for paid sick day.
Well, I know. It's the smaller ones. Now, this is why I'm kind of confused. When you've got big manufacturing or food processing plants that they don't have that, I'd like to know a breakdown of employer by employer by employer. So anyway, what we've got now is the Section 22 that Dr. Lowe and Peel, Dr. Davila here in Toronto, 2 hotspots, have said if there's more than 5 cases in a workplace in a 2-week span, they're shutting it down for 10 days. Is that as good as paid sick days, basically shutting the whole company down? Maybe the company now will take heed and say, I better start paying sick days.
Well, John, you know something? They operated last year. How many food plants operated last year, knowing that there were outbreaks in their plant, and they kept operating until there was no more staff in the plants to run. So why shouldn't they do this? This should be a province-wide thing, not just a certain area or parts of Toronto, but it should be province-wide. It should have been implemented months ago, not last year.
All right, but you're saying put it on the employer to pay then, rather than the government.
Yes. Like I've been working in the food industry for over 40 years, and you know something. When it comes to the bottom line, they're very concerned about the bottom line. They preach how important their employees are. Well, maybe this is part of the time to show how important your employees are. If that's to cover a couple of weeks sick pay, it's not going to hurt your bottom line that much.
All right. I appreciate it, because we know that a lot of people are saying it's really the onus is on the government to implement this comprehensive policy. We'll come back, take more calls. Just wanted to know how this is best addressed, because the government now is considering, and I'm sure it's imminent, we'll hear an announcement that they're going down that road, that will implement paid sick days. Again, Christine Elliott, the Minister of Health, was saying earlier today that they were waiting on the feds and the budget yesterday to come out with a plan that would sort of reinforce what they're already putting on offer, and it wasn't there, so now it's up to the province. It's incumbent upon the province to fill in the gap. And some may say a little too late, better late than never. I mean, we're just talking about this idea, the paid sick days. Are they the best way forward? But too, about individual responsibility, closing the border to international travel, and so on and so forth. More openly in a moment with your thoughts. 870-6400. Global News Radio, 640 Toronto.
If you're driving less these days, I've got good news and bad news. Good news, you're saving on gas. Bad news, a vehicle that sits may develop issues. Good news, the All-In Spring event has...
We would certainly expect in Greenland, possibly in sort of the Canadian or Arctic ice caps. Right now, not such a concern in Antarctica, but we would expect that this is more of a general process, and that if Antarctica reaches a point where it's seeing the kind of melt seasons and temperatures that we see in Greenland, that this might be a process that would transfer there as well.
Riley Kohlberg from Stanford University. This is news live from the BBC, and just before we head on, I should say that we're getting reports that the jury in the Derek Chauvin
murder trial has reached a verdict and that it will be announced within the next 30 minutes. We will, of course, bring it to you as soon as that happens. While we wait, though, relations between Russia and the West have been icy for some time now. Between Russia and the Czech Republic, they've turned furious. At the weekend, the government in Prague.
People were hospitalized in Ontario with COVID-19. We now have more than that in the ICU alone. I'm Irene Precklett. This is 6 City News. Clarification today from the federal health minister regarding vaccine deliveries to Ontario. It comes after a statement from Premier Doug Ford saying there are new delays with AstraZeneca shipments to this province. A federal procurement official tells 6 City News Ford's office is using outdated draft schedules from over a month ago. We've been told that 2.3 million doses of AstraZeneca have already been delivered to Canada, with the remaining 1.5 million due by the end of April. About 8 million doses of Pfizer are expected to arrive in Canada in May, and 300,000 Johnson & Johnson
they do this
shots
to confuse
are due
the spies.
next week.
This is 6 City News on the Weather Watch.
So there's 2.3 million doses sitting around that nobody knew was here.
Winter weather travel advisory for Toronto and the GTA. 6 City's Phil Martino joins us live with the news you can use. Phil.
James, a 6 City News meteorologist Natasha Ramsahai says snow in April is not rare, but snow in late April is. We pull some of the latest April snowfalls as measured at Pearson. We only get a handful, and they go back to 1945, 1963, and 1976. Snowfall amounts of between 4 and 8 centimeters are possible for Toronto and the rest of the GTA by noon tomorrow. A couple of things that are going to limit the snowfall amounts that are going to be actually on the ground in Toronto. One, we've got a lot of dry air in place, so the system is just grazing us to the south, but it's fighting with this dry air to the north. So that's why we're talking about trace to nil by the time we get up towards Barrie and King City and up towards Georgian Bay. City of Toronto spokesperson Eric Holmes says pavement temperatures are warm right now.
This is going to be 12 centimeters.
The snowfall is probably not going to accumulate that much.
Fuck you.
So it's going to be slippery. It's going to be under this year tomorrow, but we don't expect much accumulation on the roads and sidewalks and bike lanes.
I'm not leaving my house.
Holmes says salt trucks will be out making rounds around the city. Phil Martino, 6 City News.
Gas prices are next.
Listen 3, 4, 5 times a day on your radio, on our mobile app, and on your smart speaker.
Play 680 News. What are you making, hon?
Leek and artichoke
Is it a government program that ought to, if only temporarily, seal off any kind of loopholes or things that, people falling through the cracks and the virus continues to spread? Then there's that international travel. There's no ban. What do we hear? 33 flights from Delhi, I think, have people infected. Because you can test negative on the ground 72 hours before, get on that plane, and you can come back into the country. You may or may not test positive at that time, and then immediately thereafter. It's a strange window that a lot of people may be falling through the cracks. And who knows where the transmission's happening. Here we go back to the lines of Mark and St. Cat's.
3
St.
days
Kitts, I
to
guess,
catch
joining
the
us here
virus.
this afternoon.
You
Hey, Mark.
test negative, then you got 3 days to get on the plane.
Thank you, Marcus.
And you're on the plane for 18 hours.
Yeah,
in the same air all
this gets
day.
me really at the core of the whole personal responsibility idea. I keep hearing about all this whining and fussing over paid sick days. People can't afford to take a day off. What happened to all the small business owners that are being put out of business? They get some small, here and there benefits, but a lot of them are simply going out of business. They are dead broke, and they can't afford it either. But here we are anyways. So I'm sorry, but if you've got to take a couple days off to avoid getting other people sick, absolutely responsibility should come into play here. Personal responsibility. It's something that nobody in politics wants to talk about these days. So I'm glad we're having that discussion. What about fines for people that come into work knowingly sick? Do that.
It's supposed to be $1 million.
It's not going to cost anybody anything, except it puts the onus on the individual. If you knowingly come to work sick, $1,000 fine.
It's $1 million.
Well, all right. It's the compensation. It seems like they're compelled to come in because if they're not paid, they can't pay the rent or buy food. So then should the employer cover them off to protect the other employees and the workplace, the integrity of the workplace? Like, whereas you're saying the burden of responsibility ought to be on that individual to make sure they stay home and don't infect anybody. But it's the compensation question that's arisen. This is where, people like, the NDP have been banging on this note for the longest time. Should Ford then put in place a temporary plan to pay these people?
If we were 100% bailing out every small business owner 100% and paying them everything they've lost, sure, but we're not doing that. We're letting them fail.
But there are programs, obviously, to tide people over. I'm not saying they're adequate, but they have been extended, even in the federal budget yesterday, up until the 25th of September. You get the rent, the wage subsidy extended. Look, I know it's not perfect, but there is something there. And for the employee who loses a day or 2 or 5 days of wages, where is their compensation? Where is the safety net under them? That's the question.
Why, though? Why do they need one? But more than that, again, if you can sacrifice a couple days' work, it's not like, I understand some people are in that situation where that's going to be a big deal. But
some people are living paycheck to paycheck, and this becomes a case where
business owners, John.
I understand. Look, I understand the small business people are up against it. I've advocated for them. Everything and anything that can be done to help them, I would promote. I'm just wondering if with the small individual, the individual who maybe feels sick, going into work, where they feel there's no other alternative, otherwise they don't get paid, you're saying, well, they ought to stay home regardless, not being paid because they have a duty to not infect anybody or pass that on. But you know how people are compelled when they're faced with not being paid, not having anything to, put on the table or pay the rent. So there's got to be a bridge here, and whether it's the employer who pays it, whether it's the federal government, the provincial government, or, you compel the owner of the business, because if there are 5 or more cases, we're hearing now from Dr. Lowe and Dr. Davila, they're going to shut down that business. That gets the attention of the employer, the company. Mark, let me move on. I got Leanne joining me next here on the Oakley Show. Good afternoon, Leanne. Your thoughts on this?
Callers, angry.
It's round and round of circles, it seems. But it does make sense that we pay people who are actually feeling symptoms where maybe they show a positive test, and then they can get paid by the government if they're not eligible for sick pay. That's just my thought.
Well, no, if they test positive, they would obviously, they'd have to quarantine at home, and they're out of work, so they're not being paid. So who then pays for it?
I think the government. The government slashed out a lot of money in the past little while with the CERB. And then this way, at least people who are, it's not even if they're living paycheck to paycheck. People need money. You need to get to work.
Well, the point that you made is kind of the one that we've consigned ourselves to, or we've resigned ourselves to. It's an era of resignation. The government has spent so much money on everything and anything. Does any of it matter anymore? How many zeros? I mean, it's sort of a cynical look at how things are breaking out. Yesterday's budget is a pretty good indication of that. But somewhere along the line, putting a safety net under these people seems to be what most people want. Or the science advisory table are now going public saying they've advocated for this and Ford disregarded it. And his caucus, or I guess they voted it down in the legislature. Let's come back. Thanks, Leanne, for weighing in. I've got more where that came from. Sarah in Toronto joining us on the Oakley Show. All right, hang on, Sarah. Hold your fire. I'm going to come back in a moment. We'll talk to you, and then we'll get to the head of the North American Scrabble Players Association, because wokeness has now inserted itself into the venerable game that tests your ability to cobble words together and score points. We'll find out how so. And by the way, the jury has reached a verdict in this Derek Chauvin case in Minneapolis. Whether or not this guy skates, I doubt it. It's been a rather quick verdict. What was it, a day? The defense rested yesterday. Verdict already in. All right, and it has to be unanimous, by the by. So we'll come back and get that detail forthcoming as it is. 16 before the top of the hour. Let's get back out to the roads right now and a check of chopper traffic. Ari Rabinovich.
Public secretaries are reported to be resigning. John Barnes is a great in the football firmament. He's a former England and Liverpool player. John, what's your view of what's going on?
Well, when it first broke, I felt it was a negotiation tactic, a power play to try and get more money from UEFA. I never felt it would go ahead. And obviously, now it's not going to go ahead. And it seems as if UEFA are going to come to a compromise with the clubs, with a new deal to get a little bit more money. So this is the outcome I expected. But for one, not...
It's United Nations TV. That's what we're working with. You want to hear some advertisements? Check it out loud and clear.
A tub of water in which to relaxeth. Ah, happy wifeth, happy lifeth, am I right?
Thou knowest it.
Do you own thine castle? Indeedeth. Well then, approveth. Huzzah! Yes.
Alpine credits, where castle owners get approved since 1969, so not quite the Middle Ages, but close. Alpine credits. Some conditions apply. FISRA license 12616.
Ontario's COVID-19 vaccine plan is helping to stop the spread and save lives. Until we're all vaccinated, we need to stay the course. Wear a mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. We've come so far together, and thousands of people across Ontario are getting vaccinated every day. Your turn is coming soon. Visit ontario.ca/COVID vaccine plan or call 1-888-999-6488 for assistance in 300 languages. Paid for by the Government of Ontario. Dads, we all got one.
Close the fridge door, will ya? You're letting all the cold air out.
Always trying to save a buck or two around the house.
Are you all...
It's business, and fans have to understand that this is business. And of course, we own the game and we love the game and we feel invested in the game.
Mona, your first and last call should be to LG Home Comfort for your heating, cooling, and water needs. So get a tankless water heater and save on that 20-minute shower or flip on that air conditioner. Visit LGHomeComfort.ca to learn more.
Above 7 degrees Celsius, your winter tires wear faster and get noisy on the warm, dry surface. But with a quick change from winter to Toyota recommended all-season tires, you'll extend the life of your winter tires and enjoy a quieter ride on your all-season tires, which are designed for warmer temperatures. Come into your nearest Ontario Toyota dealer today and get the right tires at the right price, thanks to our price match promise. When it comes to tires, details make the difference. Terms and conditions apply.
Doug Ford says schools are safe. Former police officer Derek Chauvin, he's accused in the death of George Floyd. The verdict is expected within the hours. CNN's Sarah Seidner is outside the courthouse.
We now know it is not going to be a hung jury. This jury has made a decision. We know that it has taken, they were 4 hours. They deliberated yesterday. So that's 5 more hours. So we're talking about 9 hours that they have been deliberating before they came to the courts and or told the court that they had reached a verdict in this case.
Stay with 680 News for the latest on this developing story. This is 680 News. The Prime Minister says he's trying to book his own COVID vaccination appointment as provinces hand the shot out to more adults.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in the process of booking his COVID vaccination appointment now that Ontario has reduced the eligibility age to 40. He says he's looking to receive the AstraZeneca shot at a pharmacy.
And if I can encourage folks to know that it's safe and indeed it's the right thing to do, I'm looking forward.
Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole has his vaccination appointment booked for this weekend. Manitoba, Alberta, and BC have also reduced the AstraZeneca minimum age to 40, while Quebec has set it at 45 in hopes of vaccinating more people despite concerns about an extremely rare form of blood clot. New Brunswick reported the 3rd case in Canada of someone developing a clot after receiving the shot. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization was supposed to update its guidance on the AstraZeneca vaccine today, but it's postponed the announcement. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Have we? Traffic and weather together next. This is 680 News.
It's more than the government's hand at this point, and there's nothing temporary about giving money away or taxing anything. That is going to be permanent, and he's created a political football here. These cases now, people are bringing it into the plant or the place of employment. And what's happening is they're going to encourage irresponsibility here, because what's going to happen is people are going to go out, they're going to do what they want to do, knowing full well they've got paid sick leave. And you know, when people say the government's going to pay, no, we are going to pay for this. And after going through this for a year, what do people not know about staying safe and protecting themselves? People have just been completely irresponsible here. And what's going to happen is you're creating a bucket load of problems.
Let me just stop you there. I mean, when you say we're going to pay for this, I'm assuming you mean the taxpayers collectively. But here's the issue. If we don't do something to put a safety net under these people, however you may say some will abuse that or exploit it, we're still paying for this pandemic now in terms of closures and the shadow pandemic with the mental health issues. You know, golf courses closed by one example.
Wait,
You
what
know,
the
so
fuck's
people
a
are saying
shadow
we're not getting a
pandemic?
recreation.
What
It
the
leads to
fuck?
all kinds of other social ills. These are the kinds of, it's a bigger question of whether we nip it in the bud with the paid sick days. That's why I said, is that the panacea here? Is there something else? And to the point that Dr. Lowe has made, and Davila as well now, if a company, an employer, has more than 5 instances of infection within a 2-week period, they will, by Section 22 of the law, shut them down. What employer wants to risk that? So does the employer step up, do a more diligent screening, promising to pay these people to stay home so it's not on the government, it's on the employer? That's the real question, like who is going to subsidize this program? And I guess the province is saying they thought the feds would. Feds didn't step up in the budget yesterday. So this is where, you know, we're sort of playing this Alphonse and Gaston act. Sarah, I've got to let you run. Just thought I'd explain that, what is being played out here. But it looks like the Ford government will relent and implement this. I'm sure it's imminent. How soon it will be put into place, anyone's guess, but we're waiting for that announcement as well as the Chauvin case. However, before we get to the top of the hour, 8 minutes now away from a news update, and in the next hour, by the way, on that Chauvin case, the verdict is going to be read, I'm told now, from 4:30 to 5, and we'll do it live here on the Oakley Show. Also find out from somebody at the Rotman School of Business here at the U of T what the dickens happened with the Rogers outage yesterday and its impact, and what can be done to ameliorate the situation. Some people's businesses were severely impacted. Not just folks who wanted to dial up a friend in a time of COVID lockdown. But, you know, if it comes to people needing to, in their small circle of friends, maybe play a couple of board games here and there, Scrabble seems to be one at the top of the list. It's
the GTA. The minute you get to Burlington, Oakville, now we're talking a couple more centimeters, and then Hamilton to Niagara really going to bear the brunt of this. Morning wind chills, please dress for
when you get there,
-8.
there's
Feels
no
like
snow
you have
and
to
it's
stand
snow.
under that bus stop. The afternoon tomorrow, the snow will taper off after lunch. We'll get into some sun and 4 degrees, and then Wednesday night into Thursday morning, now we're watching lake effect flurries coming in off of Georgian Bay. So still could be some slick conditions early Thursday before the sun comes out in the afternoon with a high of 7. And as I said, Friday sunny and 16. Tonight down to -1. It's currently 5 degrees up Pearson.
Man, if I was in a RAV4 right now, I'd load up my gear and head out for an adventure. Nothing would stand in my way. Just me and the open road in front of me.
Sir, drop to the second window, please.
Red tag days are back.
I think a majority of Germans care about as political topics aside from Corona right now.
And do they have a strong platform beyond climate change?
That's the big question. Their candidate for Chancellor, Annalena Baerbock, is quite young. She's just turned 41, I believe, and she has no government experience whatsoever. And but the party, in fact, has broadened its platform continuously. It also has like quite clear positions on economy, on like defense, public foreign policy. So there is a platform, but we will see. There are quite a few doubts still if they can really pull off a majority that would be enough to win the chancellery.
Melanie Allen from Der Spiegel, thank you very much for joining us from Berlin. Tens of thousands of unaccompanied children are currently being held in US government custody, and the number continues to grow. President Biden has promised change at the border, but he's extended rather than repealed one of the most restrictive immigration policies ever implemented at the US southern border. The Biden administration has kept those restrictions in place, but is allowing unaccompanied children to enter the country, which, as Sophie Long reports from Tijuana, is leading desperate parents to take ever more desperate measures.
Under a bridge which tens of thousands of vehicles cross every day, hundreds of families camp crushed up against the border wall. Women wash clothes while their children cry, exhausted by this noisy, unsanitary existence. When night comes, it's their mothers' tears that fall, while their fathers, if they still have them, lie awake with their fears. They came here in search of the American dream, but this is their reality, and it has been as days became weeks, weeks became months, and for some, months slowly turned into years.
My husband got killed. The violence and everything got worse, and Well, they told us that they were going to come for us.
In her tent with her baby strapped to her chest and her young son and daughter playing by her side, Rosaura tells me her husband was killed by the cartels.
We need good life for our kids. That's why I came over here.
And yet she says their stomachs are sick almost all the time, and she lies awake, alone, and terrified about what might happen to her children.
They take girls and do that stuff. They get abused, they get killed, they get taken. I don't sleep at night.
Rosaura is literally a stone's throw from San Diego and the safety of the United States. She can see it. She looks through the metal gates at what could be every day, but she's stuck in one of the most violent cities in the world with just a thin sheet of nylon for protection. So we're just at El Chaparral camp, and there are loads of kids out playing in the bright sunshine on scooters and with balls, but there are tents and makeshift covers that go all the way up to the gates where people leave Mexico and enter the United States. We've spoken to many people here, and they say they're hopeful that the rumors they're hearing that President Biden will open the border are true. The pandemic has made an already dire situation here worse. Title 42, introduced by the Trump administration, effectively closed the border to immigrants to prevent the spread of COVID-19. It all but halted the asylum system. Lawmakers, including the then Senator Kamala Harris, who now as vice president is leading the Biden administration's response to this crisis, called it unconstitutional. Yet it's been extended and remains in place. But Joe Biden has said he won't return unaccompanied children to the danger they fled. Nicole Elizabeth Ramos is director of El Otro Lado Immigration Rights Project.
Many parents who have been trapped here for a year or more understand that if they send their children ahead, that their children will not be returned. And they have genuine concerns and fears whether they're ever going to make it out of Mexico alive. And they would rather have the chance for their children to live, even if it means never seeing them again, than all of them dying here together.
President Biden is walking the same political tightrope as many of his predecessors, trying to enforce a border between a developing country and one of the wealthiest in the world, whilst trying to show humanity to those desperate to cross it. So far, his efforts have resulted in the separation of thousands of children from their parents.
Sophie Long reporting from Tijuana in northern Mexico. That's it from NewsHour from all of us. Thanks for listening.
There, that live between 4:30 and 5. Oakley Show continues.
With the pandemic and the ability to work from home, it's made so many of us reevaluate our priorities and our lives. Well, I want to... sell his property within his 30-day time frame and still got $150,000.
6 City News, the CFTR AM Toronto. It's 4 o'clock.
Toronto's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News.
Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, April 20th. I'm James Monroe.
I'm Slajana Timmons. Here are the top stories right now.
Quick breaking news from Minneapolis. A verdict has been reached in the trial of a former police officer accused in the death of George Floyd. It will be read shortly.
Any business in Toronto or Peel with at least 5 cases of COVID in 14 days could be closed for 10 days under new Section 22 orders.
Here comes not the sun, the snow. Environment Canada has issued a weather advisory for Toronto and the rest of the GTA. We could see between 4 and 8 centimeters of snow by noon tomorrow.
The Blue Jays make the trip to Fenway Park tonight, and William Nylander will suit up in Vancouver. Sports at 15.
Closing bell ringing on Wall Street, ending very much a down day for stocks. The Dow slides more than 250. Business at 26.
680 News Time, 401.
Traffic and weather together on the one. Zach Bodenstein.
The crash east of James Snow, right and ramp lanes are blocked. Very slow right now from east of Highway 25. They've also blocked the northbound James Snow ramp to the eastbound 401 partially. You can still get through. It's a squeeze, though. And it's slowing down westbound traffic.
Yo, 640 Toronto chopper traffic.
Lost your job? Make sure your severance is fair. Call the employment lawyer, Lior Samfiru, host of the Employment Law Show, 1-855-821-59.
Here, Ontario in the Express, and from Mavis collectors towards Mississauga Road. And then there's this issue, Toronto-bound QEW on the upside of the Burlington Skyway, stalled transport truck in the right lane. No real delay through here, but might catch your eye heading through the area. Westbound QEW slow from Jarvis to west of Strawn. Bronte to west of Guelph line, and the North DVP slow from Florida north of Lawrence. Looking for better results from your Google advertising? Switch to Search Kings, winner of the Google Premier Partner Customer Satisfaction Award. Your search is over. Let Search Kings help your customers find you. With a look at the forecast, good afternoon, Natasha Ramsahide.
Yes, good afternoon. Things have clouded over now. We've got some wet flurries happening out through the west end of Lake Ontario. After midnight, that snow's going to start ramping up, but you're probably not even going to have to shovel, especially Toronto northward. Like when I say Toronto, 401 northward, it's trace amounts. Looking at a couple of centimeters at most for Toronto. The highest amounts will really be Hamilton to Niagara, where we're in the 4 to 8, even up to 10 plus centimeters in that forecast. Morning temperatures, though, -1, wind chill -8. It is going to be slick, reduced visibility. Even though that snow is falling and melting, it's going to be tricky travel to start before the sun comes out after lunch. Tomorrow's high, 4 degrees. Overnight tonight, winter weather travel advisory in effect as we drop to -1. It's currently 5 degrees at Pearson.
680 News Time, 403.
Breaking news from Minneapolis. A verdict has been reached in the trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin accused in the death of George Floyd.
The decision should be delivered within the hours. CNN's Sarah Seidner is outside the courthouse.
It is a seminal case for many people, whether you are African American, whether you're a police officer, whether you're black or white, Latino. Doesn't really matter what your background is. This, everyone realizes, is a big case in this country. It could mean something to a lot of people, a seminal case, if you will. And so the nerves that exist here, there is concern, there is fear, there is anger, there is sorrow, all of the things that you can feel as a human being, we're feeling right now in spades here in Minneapolis.
Stay with 680 News for the latest on this developing story.
This is 680 News, a winter weather travel advisory in effect for Toronto and the GTA. 680's Phil Martino joins us live with what we can expect, and it will be tonight into tomorrow. Phil.
James, the 680 News meteorologist Natasha Ramsahide says we can expect snow heavy at times and blowing snow tomorrow morning. Now, 1 to 2 centimeters for the north and east GTA, 2 to 5 for the south and west GTA, including downtown, and 5 to 8 for Hamilton.
It's also calling for safe outdoor activity to be allowed, noting inconsistent policies with no clear links to scientific evidence.
If we do see any accumulation that's traced to a centimeter or 2 across Toronto, will likely fall on grassy surface. Now, City of Toronto spokesperson Aaron
likely on grassy
says
surfaces. Thank you. That helps.
So if you are going out making a
I think this snow isn't going to fall on the road or the sidewalk.
Leave plenty of extra time and take it slow.
Holm says salt trucks will be out making rounds around the city to make sure our roads are safe. Martino, 680 News.
2 GTA public health units are moving forward with efforts to curb COVID-19 outbreaks in workplaces. This comes as the province appears a step closer to providing real help in the way of paid sick days. We'll have more on that in a moment. First, we're joined live by 680's Mark Douglas for the latest from Toronto and Peel. Mark.
So, Jenna, 5 cases of COVID in 14 days is all it will take for a workplace to be closed in Toronto or Peel. Each government today announcing a new Section 22 order to close workplaces for 10 days under those circumstances. The chair of Toronto's Board of Health, Councillor Joe Cressy, says this will protect essential workers, even if it means they can't do their essential work.
If the supply chain is disrupted slightly, that is certainly unfortunate, but if it is in the cause of protecting the health of all, in helping to beat this third wave, then sometimes that is a necessary course of action.
Now, as for any lost wages that could come from this, Cressy says Dr. Eileen de Villa and pretty much every healthcare leader in Ontario has been calling for paid sick leave for the better part of a year now. The region of Peel is urging but not ordering employers to provide some paid leave for affected workers. Partial closures of a workplace where possible, that's an option. Cressy did not want to name any specific workplaces that might be closed. He says Toronto and the region of Peel have worked together on these new orders. Peel's new Section 22 order is out today. Toronto's will be issued into effect by Friday at the latest. Reporting live, I'm Mark Douglas.
At Queen's Park, it appears as if the Ford government may be close to changing its stance on paid sick days.
It certainly appears now like the Ford government is softening its stance and ready to cave on paid sick days. Here's Minister Christine Elliott.
It was clear yesterday with the budget that it was not going to be improved by the federal government. And so we are considering our alternatives now to deal with those gaps.
He wouldn't elaborate when asked to provide details. Meantime, the Premier was again nowhere to be seen today. He hasn't been seen in public since Friday. We did find out, though, he's doing a virtual fundraiser on Thursday. So where exactly is he right now, Minister Elliott?
He's been working on the vaccination efforts virtually full-time.
Green Party leader Mike Schreiner.
I just discussed that the Premier seems to have time to hold $1,000 fundraisers, but he doesn't have time to come to question period.
I'm Richard Southern.
A small sense of relief today as the province reports slightly fewer new cases of COVID-19. However, hospitalization and ICU rates continue to climb. Here's 680's Irene Precklett. Ontario is reporting 3,469 new COVID-19 cases today and 22 additional deaths. The testing positivity rate 10%. Today is another record-breaking day in the province's hospitals. 2,360 COVID patients hospitalized, 773 of them in the ICU, 537 of those needing a ventilator. Anthony Dale is the president of the Ontario Hospital Association. He says the situation is the most serious it's ever been in the history of our modern healthcare system.
All signs are that the system is in enormous distress, and we will continue to do everything within our powers to make sure people get the access to the care they need. But it is remarkable. It's a remarkable challenge.
Dale says this will have a long-lasting impact on healthcare in the province. I'm Irene Precklett.
Starting tomorrow, some pharmacies in Ontario will be offering COVID vaccines 24/7.
The Ontario government, in collaboration with Shoppers Drug Mart, will offer round-the-clock vaccinations for people over the age of 40 at more than 20 pharmacy locations. Now, the majority are located in hotspots, including Toronto, Peel, and York region. And when more supply of the AstraZeneca shot arrives in Canada, the 24/7 vaccinations are expected to be expanded. The province is also working with pharmacies to offer walk-in services. For the time being, though, you are still advised to contact participating pharmacies to see what's available. A list of participating pharmacies can be found at ontario.ca/pharmacy COVID vaccine. At the Business Center, I'm Chris McCusker.
And we have an update now from Rogers Communications. It says it is offering customers a credit after that big nationwide wireless outage yesterday. The company says a credit equivalent to the wireless service fee on Monday will be applied to a future bill. Rogers says the credit will be done automatically. No action is required by customers. We'll track gas next.
Wireless is what, 30th of what? $2?
What happens?
Is there not a
Always hear the latest.
city update, something
McDonald's Egg McMuffin is
important
made
and
with
official
a
from
fresh
somebody?
But wait, there's also a bacon and egg McMuffin. And
I thought John Tory was doing his update around now, and he's not.
And we know all kinds of barricades been placed around businesses in that city and others as well, which, of course, reminiscent of last year in the aftermath of the killing or the death of George Floyd in late May. All hell broke loose across most American cities. Now, the other thing, too, that has inserted itself into this equation is Maxine Waters, who's a member of Congress. Well, there there are others of that ilk or stripe that have come in and, just thought it was necessary to insert themselves. As a politician, though, this might have been grossly irresponsible, because even the judge upbraided her yesterday and saying that, she ought not to have made her opinions known, saying there ought to be more confrontation, if this verdict doesn't go the right way. And whoa, that's just, again, lighter fluid on the barbecue, as they say. Very inflammatory language, which may even be grounds for an appeal. If again, well, one way or the other, I'm sure this verdict may be appealed, but still, on that matter, some were even suggesting that maybe Maxine Waters inserting herself this way with her inflammatory rhetoric may be setting up a mistrial, although the judge obviously didn't bite on that, but he did leave open the avenue for an appeal. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that one plays out. That decision is imminent. On the other matter we addressed in the first hour, we were talking about the paid sick days. That could also be an imminent announcement from the provincial government, because now it seems they feel that the feds didn't step up and close the gap off yesterday in this regard with their program that is too unwieldy, I guess, to get the money when you need it. In the interim, both Dr. Lawrence Lowe in Peel, and Dr. Eileen DeVille in Toronto, the two designated hotspots, have invoked Section 22, this of the Provincial Health Promotion and Protections Act. And what it says is they have authority, it's their purview. And in this instance anyway, any business that has an outbreak of 5 or more people infected over a 2-week span, over 14 days, they will then shut that business down for no fewer than 10 days. It'll be 10 days anyway. And so the employer has been served notice on that. So I guess it may be incumbent upon employers too to be very mindful of any worker showing up sick. Something I'm kind of curious about, if that's the right way to do it, or is the province really on the hook here? Should the feds get the bill for needless to say, just the one taxpayer, but we'll get back into that. However, when compensation is being addressed, I want to take some calls on this, because yesterday was a very, very frustrating day for many. Now, I was not here, but in the event that, I had to communicate, with my producer, Michael Downey, and try to recruit guests and so on and so forth, because this is the way we work in a wireless environment these days. My Rogers service was out. It was kaput. People were trying to get a hold of me, and goodness knows, there's nowhere to be, nowhere to go. So that was somewhat fortuitous, but not everybody is in that situation. A lot of people, I've had business folk who were telling me, friends who've got businesses, and their phone number is also their business number, and nobody could reach them, no clients to recruit their services. So where do they go then for some kind of compensation, or to be made whole, or at least to even air their grievance? I tried, by the way, to get to the Rogers people. I thought, hey, maybe this is an isolated case. 2-hour minimum wait to have some techie talk to you, if that was even possible to do. And then when I realized this was something right across the country, in effect, there was no point to it. Just put down the phone and went about my business in silence. But this is where a lot of people did not have that same luxury to do, or at least, and they were impacted. So I'm going to ask you, before we get to a professor at the Rotman School at the University of Toronto who's weighed in on whether or not Rogers ought to compensate, let me ask you straight up, how did it impact you, and do you think there ought to be some form of compensation? If you were a business owner and you've got a wireless connection to the outside world, basically, this is your lifeline, the lifeblood of your business. Goodness knows, in a time of pandemic, you're already probably reeling. And even on a personal level, if you were trying to make appointments, to get vaccinated, some people have complained there was no way that they could actually, and especially when the government was announcing that people over 40 suddenly were available for the AstraZeneca. Hey, people probably saying, sign me up for that. Let me see if I can get an appointment at the pharmacy. Oh, wait, your service is not operating right now. Tell me about it, 870-6400. I'd like to take a flurry of fast calls before we do find out from the professor at the Rotman School exactly how he would play his hand. I wanted to hear your story, direct impact on this, and how it might have materially affected your business, your company, your standing. business loss, that kind of thing. 870-6400. We'll take a flurry of fast ones because I'm believing there are myriad stories out there. And if yours is one you want to share, there may be 8 million in the naked city. This is a good occasion to do that. 870-6400. And from out of town, 888-225-TALK. Gets you on board the Oakley Show. As I say, still awaiting the Derek Chauvin verdict. Everybody's sort of on tenterhooks there in places like Minneapolis and what have you. And so when we pick that up live, we will gauge the reaction and the response and also go to you. And then we've got our panel 2 in the next hour, just an hour and change away, topics worthy of discussion. This is one such, and I wanted to get you to weigh in. If you were impacted directly by the outage by the Rogers wireless disservice yesterday, Rogers is saying it was their principal partner in this with Ericsson. I don't know. What does that say for your confidence in this carrier? There are the 3 major ones. And whether or not compensation ought to be offered here to people who were put out. And I don't know how you'd quantify that. I don't know how you'd get about seeking that kind of redress. As I say, our professor friend may have more insight. Right now, I just wanted to grab a call or 2 on this one. Let's go to cousin Steve here on the Oakley Show. Steve, hello.
Hey, John, how are you?
Very good, thanks.
A long time ago, we talked about the golden eagles that were flying up from Pennsylvania to Ontario that we saw. You may not recall that conversation. But at any rate, as a cybersecurity professional with over 20 years of experience in R&D and various risk management areas, I've always planned for contingencies. And actually, right now, I'm talking to you on a contingency. I'm talking to you over a voice over IP phone, which is not even connected to a cell phone network, but I am talking to you via cell phone right now. And that being said, this impact yesterday didn't bother me at all. And that's the interesting thing, because unfortunately, these arrangements from a telecommunications perspective, of which I have a significant expertise in, they are not necessarily guaranteed services as similar to the fixed line services that we once had before with plain old telephone services.
All right, well, let me just ask you, Steve, I mean, on the VoIP, I mean, if somebody has a business number and their wireless is down, how do they connect with the VoIP to their clientele?
Limit for people receiving.
Now, that is a fantastic question, because realistically, you can set up what they call a hunt group, right? And what that would do is that if the primary number has failed and you have, let's say, a soft phone, a voice over IP service, right? You can basically get the phone number redirected.
You're relying on the same company that's fucked up your phone to forward your calls to another phone.
A beat, okay. Good enough to know. Yeah, and the Golden Eagles are still flying in from Pennsylvania, from what I heard. It's like the Swallows returning to Capistrano on St. Joseph's Day.
And the butterflies going back to Mexico.
To Mexico, the Monarchs, that's where they go, right there, yeah, in the mountains in Mexico. You are correct, cousin Steve. Let me get to Daniel in Burlington here on the Oakley Show.
You might not recall
Daniel,
that
how were
conversation.
you impacted yesterday, if at all?
Johnny, not directly, but what I want to say is I'm sorry, I've had it with these 2 big companies. They want to hit me with every little charge, left, right, and center. If I go over my data, 1 megabyte, they're going to charge me $10 for this and that. Every minute you go over, they charge for everything. So it's time for them to pay up.
Well, let's see. We're going to find out from the prof in a minute or 2. He's going to join us here. Thanks, Daniel.
Good luck with it.
Mike in Toronto, make your last call, and we'll get to the professor from the Rodman School of Business. What do you say, Mike? You lose business yesterday?
Without taking up too much of your time, it cost me $2,800. But you know what? I'll learn from my lesson. I shouldn't be running my business and relying on a cell phone.
I'll learn
but
from my
they
lesson.
should be, and this is going to sound crazy, just refund me the retro, a 30th of a day of a month of my cell phone bill. Give me my $4 as a slap in the face. Don't make me have to call you guys for 2 hours on hold to get my $4.
Hey, Mike, by the way, how much do you quantify you might have lost in business yesterday because of the outage?
I lost $2,800.
How do you know?
Because I didn't receive a text message with papers that I needed to submit. I'm in the insurance industry, and that's what my commission would have been. And so it's a little, I might be able to recapture it, but I got to jump through hula hoops now.
Well, let's see exactly how one might go about that. We're going to find out in a moment. Mike, thanks a lot for weighing in. Kind of curious how people feel about it. it does cast a pall on this particular service provider, don't it? It just adds to the hate. 20 past the hour. 4:20.
From the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario.
You heard him. It's 4:20 on 4:20.
680 News Time, 421.
Traffic and weather together, Zach Bodenstein.
This report brought to you by Lexus of Oakville. Eastbound 401 slow right now from approaching Highway 25 to east of James Snow. Those earlier problems have cleared. Busy again from the 427 to the 400 ramps and the Express and Collectors, and a slow go through Salem. Westbound 401, still hearing about this problem west of Markham Road and the Collectors blocking the right lane. Slow again after that from west of Sheer, Ontario in the Express and Mavis Collectors to approaching Mississauga Road. And from Trafalgar to James Snow, southbound 404 still looking at this issue. Many tow trucks on scene and emergency crew just arriving now. South 404 approaching Shepherd to the center lanes are blocked. It's slow from approaching Finch down towards the Shepherd ramp. Westbound Gardner and QEW delays through Jarvis to west of Strawn, approaching 3rd to Bronte. Very small break, and then busy again from Appleby to west of Guelph line. No delay, but watch out for an issue on the Toronto-bound QEW upside of the Burlington Skyway as the right lane blocked to the stalled transport truck. For a limited time, lease the 2021 NX 300F Sports Series 1 at 1.9% with bi-weekly payments from $228 and F Sport credits of $3,000. See Lexus of Oakville.ca. With an extended look at the forecast, here's Natasha Ramsay.
All right, we've got some snow tonight, some flurries falling between Hamilton and Stony Creek right now. So it's wet, it's melting on impact, and temperatures are still really warm right now. The ground is quite warm as well, so that's going to help to limit some of the snow amounts by the time you wake up in the morning, but it's going to be falling heavy at times through the morning commute, blowing snow with wind gusts up to 50 kilometers per hour. We've got -1. Wind chill -8, that's what you're waking up to. And this will only amount to maybe a centimeter, possibly 2 for Toronto. But the minute you get to Burlington, Oakville, and especially Hamilton to Niagara, that's where we're really going to have to start digging out the shovels. Snow will taper after lunch tomorrow with the wind still going and a high of 4 degrees and sunshine in the afternoon. Thursday morning, some lake effect flurries. And now it's the snow belts to the north. Could see light dusting of snow, slick conditions early Thursday before the sun comes out in the afternoon and 7. And shorts on Friday, sunshine and 16 degrees. Tonight we're down to a low of -1. It's currently 5 degrees.
16. -8.
At the bottom of the hour,
16.
Minneapolis, a verdict reached in the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer accused in the death of George Floyd. The decision should be delivered imminently. And a winter weather travel advisory out for Toronto and the GTA. A little snow on the way. This is 680 News.
What does it mean to be exceptional? Take Two Comfort. And they can help stop interest payments, stop creditors, and roll your reduced debt into one simple. Strong partners that bring innovation to life and invite you to experience exceptional moments. Moments like our Thermador 1-2 free event, where you can save over $11,000. Appliance Canada, for your home.
How much are you charging that we're going to sit home?
At appliancecanada.com. The big story.
I'm your host, Jordan Heath Rawlings. A Twitter account is leading Canada's vaccination charge. Listen at thebigstorypodcast.ca or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is 680 News. The OPP commissioner asking Peel Regional Police to investigate an incident involving an OPP officer in Gravenhurst.
In a video taken this past Sunday, you can see 2 officers confronting a young boy on a scooter outside what appears to be the YMCA in Gravenhurst when there is an altercation, and one officer appears to toss the boy to the ground.
What are you doing? He's 12 years old.
In a statement, the OPP saying it was a member of the Bracebridge OPP, saying officers stopped to talk to a group of young people, none of whom were wearing masks or social distancing, at the skate park that is now closed
talking to young people without their parents.
Officers attempted to interact with the youth, which led to the physical confrontation. The OPP commissioner says to ensure transparency, he's requested Peel Police investigate the incident while that officer is placed on administrative duty. On Friday, when the province announced it was giving police increased power, the OPP is one of the few forces that said it would be enforcing those measures, but on the same day of the video, the commissioner tweeted his members would not be arbitrarily stopping individuals or vehicles. You can see the video at 680news.com.
Listen, little kids are easy to beat up. Then they're going to steal their scooter, shove them to the ground. At the community center. Wow. It's just like high school, eh?
Jackpot is an estimated $15 million.
Management at the university.
These guys are reliving some sort of bad high school moment. They're shoving down little kids and stealing their scooters at the back of the YMCA. Everybody's got bandanas. Oh,
This is Professor
I
David
couldn't have
Soberman.
written
We
it.
know
I
of such.
couldn't
He's
have
the
written any
Canadian
of this.
National Chair in Strategic Marketing with the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. Professor, good to have you on the Open Show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
By the way, were you impacted at all by the lack of service yesterday?
This is about a roll of
No, I was not, because my service happens to be
If the
provided
verdict's
by one of the
unanimous,
other unnamed companies.
if they reached a verdict
Pizza.
and it's unanimous, that just means we're waiting on which one of the verdicts.
I could guess because it's a rather short list.
Death penalty.
Right. It would not take me long to ferret that information out. But notwithstanding all of that, there were people that were impacted. How do you think Rogers ought to play this hand now? Because it doesn't reflect positively on them, or do they care because, there's no competition, relatively speaking?
Well, it's really a combination of both of those factors which you mentioned, which is the lack of competition in the telecommunications sector and the level of customer service that we've become accustomed to, which I would suggest is not very good, really means that Rogers doesn't need to go out of its way to either compensate or do something for customers that lost service. The other side
They
is
can charge. They
good
can make up a bunch of phony charges on your bill for calls you supposedly made yesterday. You got to prove you did.
And you do what is ever necessary to keep them satisfied, and at the very least, to live up to the offer which you provided to them, which is providing them with good, reliable telecommunications services.
I'm going to open
Well, it
up
turns
a
out
whole
now the
string
company
of
says
crack
that the
houses,
credit
and I'm going to
equivalent to
advertise
Monday's
them
wireless
on
service
the
fee is going to be
nighttime.
applied to a future bill.
News Talk
It'll be done
Radio.
automatically, no actions required by the
These
customers.
crack houses.
Does that solve the case? Do you think that makes people whole?
Sun
Well,
down to
that's
sun
certainly
up.
a start, but it took them a while to come up with that, and I think that the fact that many people may have lost significantly more due to having such a major outage suggests that may be insufficient. I guess it remains to be seen what the actual amount of the compensation is. Just because you've lost 12 hours service, you could compensate for example, a week's worth of service or something like that.
Give everybody $10,
as a
you
way of
cheap
trying to
fucks. What the
recognize
hell?
the value
You're going to
of
get it all
your
back
customers.
anyway. It's not real
I think
money.
one of the
Not sending out
things for
checks.
me, though, that sort of strikes me as being very important in this whole issue is that cell phones and mobile service have become really, really important, and especially going through a pandemic when people are trying to make bookings for vaccinations, maybe even unfortunately calling an ambulance to get a loved one to the hospital, who knows? And I just find it a bit hard to believe that you can lose service for 12 hours because one of your suppliers is updating their equipment. It just doesn't seem to pass the smell test.
And you don't trust the Chinese.
Yeah, it just tells you how reliant we are now in this connected world, although we got disconnected yesterday. Again, with us, Professor David Soberman, Canadian National Chair in Strategic Marketing with the Rotman School at the U of T. The idea that the CRTC would weigh in on these kinds of matters, is it about time? I mean, I'm understanding that there's no quality of service requirements on these wireless providers in this country. Ought there to be?
Well, I think we're definitely heading in that direction. I don't really think the government has been active enough in this sector to ensure either good service or competition for Canadians. We have some of the highest
They
mobile phone
subsidize
rates
each handset
in the world.
$250.
And I really think that the level of service that you get in terms of finding things added on your bill that shouldn't be there, the amount of time that you have to wait when you call if you have a problem, including a technical problem when your phone stops working, these are things that really should be addressed, perhaps through regulations.
Well, and the other, of course, is a market force. We discussed that briefly here off the top, the lack of competition. And when you've got Freedom Mobile is now being absorbed by Rogers in that big, $26 billion deal or whatever. Is this a case, well, is this something that, a competition bureau or the government ought to, tread gingerly around that, because that's going to really reduce competition even further, isn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, I think this is something where the Competition Bureau has less of a role because you have to sort of find evidence that the companies themselves took specific actions to limit competition. And I don't think that's really
this is the opposite. They're not competing at all.
By virtue of the fact that the oligopoly that runs the telecommunications industry is just a little bit too cozy. They do not face competition from the outside. And for those reasons, I don't think they've really been providing the value that Canadians deserve. I mean, I've lived in Europe for a long time where the environment is much more competitive and the prices that people pay for mobile.
Were you running Linux on your Windows phone?
Very important because
paying €1 a year.
There are many things that everyone buys, and this is one of them. So when you have high prices, the burden of having very high mobile phone bills falls disproportionately on people in lower income brackets. So I think it should be of high concern to the government.
Well, we'll wait and see. I mean, this is just the latest indication that sometimes when the service falls far short of expectation and people are put out the way they were and their lives disrupted, business or personal, it does require some kind of greater input, I guess, from the people in charge. Professor, I appreciate your weighing in this afternoon on this. Very clarifying. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
You got it. Professor David Soberman, Canadian National Chair in Strategic Marketing with the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. We'll come back. It's imminent now that there's a verdict. It's already been rendered, but it's about to be delivered in the case of Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis. So we'll pick that one up live in moments here on the Oakley Show. Global News Radio, 640 Toronto.
Above 7 degrees Celsius, your winter tires wear faster and get noisy on the warm, dry surface. But with a quick change from winter to Toyota recommended all-season,
the afternoon after lunch, we'll get some sunny breaks for the high of 4. Tonight down to a low of -1 degree. It is currently 4 degrees.
Reasonable or not. They also centered on what actually caused or what each side believed caused. George
is following this breaking story, joins us live. Karen.
Yeah, James, in total, the jury has spent 10.5 hours deliberating Derek Chauvin's fate. The former Minneapolis police officer charged in the death of George Floyd. Now, the verdict will be read in the courtroom between 4:30 and 5 p.m. our time. Chauvin faces 3 charges, second-degree and third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. If convicted of the most serious charge, which is second-degree murder, Chauvin could face a 40-year sentence. Now, the jury has been sequestered from the outside world since lawyers gave their closing arguments yesterday afternoon. The Minnesota National Guard is on alert and security is tight across Minneapolis and key points across the U.S., with many fearing unrest if the jury chooses to acquit. Now, we're hearing Floyd's brother will be in the courtroom as the verdict is read. The Floyd family and civil rights attorney Ben Crump will hold a news conference about an hour after the verdict is read. The White House says it has been in touch with local authorities, and President Biden will reportedly address the nation tonight. Again, a verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial is coming at any moment now. We do expect to hear it in the next 30 minutes. Reporting live, I'm Karen Seolin.
This is 680 News. Health experts say workplaces are currently one of the key areas of COVID spread in the GTA. So now Peel and Toronto Public Health have updated how outbreaks in these settings will now be managed. 680's Mark Douglas joins us live with those details. Mark.
Well, so Jen, here's the basics. Any workplace with at least 5 cases of COVID in the previous 14 days can be shut down for the following 10 days. And all the workers will have to go home and self-isolate.
It's urgent, it's time-sensitive, and it is necessary.
Councillor Joe Cressy is the chair of Toronto's Board of Health, even though Amazon and Canada Post locations and several other businesses within Toronto
cities
have
up there? Is that going to be a 5?
Neither Cressy nor Dr. Riley Davila, Medical Officer of Health, are willing to name names as to which businesses might be temporarily closed with all this. Partially closing a workplace, though, that is an option. Places like schools and healthcare settings are exempt. Peel Region and the City of Toronto worked on and planned out these Section 22 orders together. Toronto's, though, will not come into effect until perhaps Friday at the latest, but Dr. Davila just tells me they might be able to get it done by Wednesday or Thursday, but they have to cross the T's and dot the I's first.
We're going to stop flights from India by Friday.
They are not taking this same action at this time. Reporting live, I'm Mark Douglas.
So after digging in their heels on the matter for months, the Ford government now appears to be considering the issue of paid sick days. Here's 680's Richard Southern.
It sure sounds like the Ford government's throwing in the towel and is set to announce some sort of paid sick day program. Minister Christine Elliott.
It was clear yesterday with the budget that it was not going to be improved by the federal government. And so we are considering our alternatives now.
What exactly could it look like? Labor Minister McNaughton.
I'm not going to speculate, but I can tell workers out there, we've got their backs. We're going to get through this together.
Green Party leader Mike Schreiner.
I just can't even explain how.
Somebody's just standing behind you, right? You're doing the work there.
To what
We got your back.
everyone have been calling for.
Meantime, no premier for the legislature again. He hasn't been seen publicly since Friday. Deputy Minister Elliott, where is Ford?
He's been working on the vaccination efforts virtually full time.
I'm Richard Southern.
For the first time in a week, Ontario is reporting fewer than 4,000 new cases of COVID-19.
But
the
they
hospitalization
underreported
numbers
yesterday.
are still off the charts. 3,469 new cases today with a 10% positivity rate. Those numbers are not records. Where there are records, the 2,360 people hospitalized, 773 of those in the ICU, 537 of those needing a ventilator. Anthony Dale is the president of the Ontario Hospital Association. He says the system is in enormous distress, with patients from the GTA being transferred across the province.
They're all working together with hospitals and the critical care command, really as one single team, Team Ontario, a single integrated force doing everything it can to deal with this remarkable crisis. Catastrophe, really.
Ontario is also reporting 22 additional COVID-related deaths. I'm Irene Precklett.
This is 680 News on the Weather Watch. May about 2 weeks away, but we have a winter weather travel advisory to tell you about. 680's Phil Martino joins us live. Phil.
James, 680 News meteorologist Natasha Ramsahai says we can expect snow heavy at times tomorrow morning
10 days.
blowing
10
snow as well.
days.
3 to 2 centimeters
A week
for
and a half.
Toronto, 2 to 4 for areas like Oshawa, Whitby, and Burlington, and 4 to 8 for Hamilton. As the system is trying to push this moisture in from the south, it's encountering drier air to the north, and so it's got to overcome that dry air in order for this snowfall to be anything significant. That's going to prove to be pretty hard to do, especially the further north you go out of Toronto. Some areas up through Cottage Country may walk away with seeing nothing at all. City of Toronto spokesperson Eric Holmes says here, salt trucks will be out making the rounds.
On different roads, the expressways especially, through the city, just to make sure that those roads are safe. But
Ramsahai says
But
snow
what?
in April is
You
not
said
rare,
but.
snow in late
He
April
said but,
is.
you didn't let him finish.
The Ontario Hockey League has canceled its season because of the pandemic. The OHL will be the only
Indian-Canadian descent, who said Canada must immediately suspend flights to and from India. And there have been numerous flights coming in from Delhi where the people have tested COVID positive.
Delhi or New
and how
Delhi?
they're continuing to come in and perhaps slip through the cracks, even the quarantine that's been somehow imposed where you've got to be testing negative before you get on the flight. And then when you come back and land at Pearson, likewise test and quarantine on your own dime.
You got 72 hours to hang around the airport and get
Until
sick.
the test results come in, and then you go home and quarantine for a full 14 days. There are still people who are slipping through those particular cracks, and that's raised, I guess, the flag that this is something that Justin Trudeau ought to close as a loophole. The other is the paid sick days. This has become the bone of contention in the province of Ontario, that the COVID-19, especially variants of concern, are raging now because people have been going into work sick and they've been transmitting the virus, and as a consequence, because they can't get paid if they take time off to recover at home or ascertain whether or not they're COVID positive, this is the real shortcoming or failing in the system because the government hasn't done enough to address it. Provincial government said it was on the feds. The feds actually put up $1 billion. They've been transmitting the virus, and as a consequence, because they can't get paid if they take time off to recover at home or ascertain whether or not they're COVID positive, this is the real shortcoming or failing in the system because the government hasn't done enough to address it. Provincial government said it was on the feds. The feds actually put up $1 billion in order to compensate people, but that was not money that would be dispatched in the immediate when people need to put food on the table or make the rent, and therefore that was really unwieldy or inappropriate. And then Christine Elliott was saying, this is the health minister provincially, that the government here in the province was looking to the feds yesterday in their budget to address that shortcoming, but they never did. So now the province may actually retrench on their position where they had voted down paid sick days in the legislature just the other day. It looks now that they may relent, their hand being forced politically, certainly, but also by their own advisory table, members of whom are becoming very public and vociferous about what needs to be done to address what they see as a dire situation. And they're saying only essential workplaces ought to be open. There ought to be paid sick days. And Jagmeet Singh federally is even asking the Prime Minister to invoke the Emergencies Act, the old warm measures thing, where nobody goes anywhere, and we're in a complete lockdown. So that's the landscape by which we find ourselves here this afternoon. As to the Chauvin case and the verdict, we're about to get it any time now, so as we await, we'll pick it up shortly. Get our feed from Minneapolis in moments on the Oakley Show. 19 before the top of the hour, again for the Roseby Vault, check a chopper traffic.
On the eastbound side, there's snow east of the 427 and the 400 in the Express. Through Leslie and the Collectors and east of Westie to east of Salem. Westbound 401 delays west of Huron, Ontario in the Express. And through Mavis and the Collectors to approaching Mississauga Road. This week at Leon's, you can save the tax on
security guards who murdered a woman at the hospital?
Packages. Shop online at leons.ca today. With a look at your forecast, here's Natasha Ranzahai.
Yeah, really impressed here with this narrow band of snow that has set up right from Brantford, really Ingersoll through Brantford over towards Stony Creek. So watch for some reduced visibility on the QEW. Melting on impact right now as temperatures are still mild. Road surfaces are warm, but overnight it'll be a couple of centimeters for Toronto, 2 to 5 Burl Oak, and then 5 plus. And when I say plus, even up to 10 to 15 for Niagara Falls. Waking up to -1, wind chill -8 in the morning with that blowing snow. And then after lunch, we'll get some sunny breaks with a high of 4, but it's windy all day. Thursday morning, lake effect snow now coming in off of Georgian Bay. So the snow belts watch for some slick conditions to start. And then gradual clearing. Thursday's high 7. How about sunshine returning for Friday and a high of 16. Tonight down to a low of -1. It's 4 degrees now at Pearson. Now the Dynamic Funds Market Minute to the Business Center. Here's Richard Southern.
And Legenda Netflix stock down 11% here in the extended trade, down to $488. The company reporting better than expected earnings, but subscriber growth numbers well below what the consensus was. 3.98 million subscribers in the latest quarter. The Street was looking for 6.2 million. Broader markets sold off into the closing bell. The Dow down 200 and
that's the same number of people that died from COVID, eh?
Down 128 points. And the
that's where all your subscribers went. They all died of COVID.
This is 680 News.
Being active is better than being reactive. Dynamic Funds doesn't just take what the market gives. Ask a financial advisor about active management and learn more.
Evolve.ca. Certain conditions apply. Greater Toronto only. Details on makegoodfood.ca.
This hour of the John Oakley Show is brought to you by LG Home Comfort, because comfort should not be costly. To learn more, visit lghomecomfort.ca. You're listening to the John Oakley Show on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
For Talk Radio, very eventful. As we see in Minneapolis, there's just a whole bevy of news media gathered there outside the courthouse where the verdict has been delivered, but it's not yet been read. So as we await that, we're going to pick it up with our colleagues at CBS News on the ground in Minneapolis for the imminent verdict in the case of Derek Chauvin. That's that Minneapolis cop. Let's go to CBS News right now here on the Oakley Show.
Presence as well. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. We will check in with you in just a second. Jessica, I want to ask you, because you're in LA and you say there are preparations there as well in case tensions run high or protests break out?
That's right. I mean, I don't think I'm sharing anything that's not public. Los Angeles obviously is a major city. We also, over the summer, saw protests based on racial injustice and problems with our criminal justice system. And so even though we are so far removed, in a lot of ways, I think we're not. Obviously, this is a systemic issue. This is a nationwide issue. And what happens in Hennepin County will affect a lot of people in Los Angeles County for reasons that we talked about, dealing both with what happens inside the courtroom and what happens outside of the courtroom. But at this point, I don't know a major city or county that doesn't have some plans in place. And frankly, it almost would be a dereliction of duty, I think, to ignore the fact that we might, depending on the verdict, that we might see civil unrest tonight.
All right, and Gloria, I'm sorry, remind me where you are with everybody on remote, and we're talking to everybody in different places. I'm not sure exactly where you are.
New York and New York City, and yes, the offices and stores have boarded their windows. There are people gathering in small groups. Many people, it's very quiet. Many people are waiting. I know that I've talked to people who are anxious, and when we first heard the verdict was happening, I mean, I got chills, fear, anxiety. There's so much this country has not done right when it comes to race relations and criminal justice. There are so many pent-up feelings. So many times this country has come to a crossroads and gone in the wrong direction when it comes to justice for people of color, and in particular African Americans. We've had Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and Philando Castile and Breonna Taylor. I mean, there's so many cases that people have these pent-up emotions. So I think that business owners are fearful that whatever the verdict may be, if it's not satisfactory to some, that there will be destruction of some property, or at least damage to property. It's the unknown. I think that's what it is. It's the fear of the unknown. Because how do you get justice in this country if you don't go to the prosecutor's office because they fail to prosecute? Then many people feel they have to go to the streets. And I know for a fact social justice comes from litigation, legislation, and protest. I've written several books about it. I've talked about race and criminal justice. And I still know that despite this country being supposedly a bright light on the hill of democracy, it has failed the Black and brown communities. And so many people are going to wonder if it's going to fail those communities today.
Yeah, well, it definitely feels like there is a lot riding on this trial, for sure. Jessica, I want to go back. We're thinking just that kind of preparation is always a little scary. Jessica, I want to go back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier in terms of the particular charges that Chauvin is facing. Second, the hardest, that would be the hardest for the prosecution to prove, correct? And that was taken out at some point, right? And put back in the last minute. Can you remind us what happened there?
For this story, right?
Yeah, so I believe that what happened in the first case is that actually the charges were for third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. Third-degree murder being this depraved mind murder that we talked about, where, again, it's not an intentional killing, but it is a killing where you create an imminent risk of harm. And then second-degree manslaughter, which includes culpable negligence. My memory is that there was a public outcry after those were the original charges that were brought. The Attorney General said, you know what, we are going to add second-degree murder. Then there was a fairly lengthy legal battle as to whether or not that third-degree murder charge was actually going to stay, because there was some discussion of whether or not you had to put a group of people at risk or just one person. This was a legal issue that actually went up and down from the trial court to the appellate court back to the trial court right before trial started. I think that it may have actually delayed the beginning of trial by about a day, and the Court of Appeals essentially said to Judge Cahill, no, you can keep that third-degree murder charge in there. So there was a moment where it might have only been that later added second-degree murder that was the only murder charge that stood in this case. Now, of course, we have the three, and we commonly, or a number of people know the second-degree murder charge. People refer to it as felony murder, where you've either committed or attempted to commit a murder, and then it is a substantial cause in a death. And that's why there's a number of steps in proving that particular. of what's happening in Minneapolis. I don't know if your viewers can hear it. I believe that if you hear background noise, it's actually police helicopters right now. So certainly all major cities are clearly getting ready. And as you said, it does feel chilling. It does feel surreal. I remember over the summer when tanks were rolling through the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah, we can't hear the sound, but we can absolutely see all the people milling, and I'm sure those crowds will just begin to grow as we get closer to the verdict. Of course, you know, we don't know how the verdict will shift the mood of the crowd. That is what remains to be seen. I want to ask you, though, a little bit more about this second-degree murder charge, because it's not premeditated, but it's intentional. Is that correct?
Right. It's not a premeditated murder. The intent you have to show is to commit a felony. So in this case, what would the felony be? It would be felony assault. So felony assault is not an accidental crime. It's not a crime that occurs as a result of negligence. And that's where the higher mens rea, the higher state of mind would come in terms of what you would have to prove. So the prosecution is not proving that, or doesn't need to prove that Officer Chauvin intended to kill. The intent would go, again, only to this element of intended to commit or attempted to commit a felony. And that is a much lower standard. And it's something that, you know, for understandable reasons, there's so much to talk about in this case, but it could end up being one of the most important aspects of this case because you don't have to show premeditation. All three counts, again, the second-degree murder, the third-degree murder, the second-degree manslaughter, they're all unintentional deaths, and obviously a much lower threshold for the prosecution. Not to say that they have an easy case, not to say that proving these elements beyond a reasonable doubt is ever a slam dunk, not to take anything away from the fact that often in these excessive force cases, we do see a successful defense, but just to say it is a much lower standard than premeditated murder.
And so when you get into third-degree murder, it's yet a lower standard, correct?
Right. In this case, I'm pausing because there's been some kind of discussion, really, frankly, about which one is more difficult to prove. But the typical view is that the second-degree murder would be more difficult to prove. That's the one that carries the maximum of the 40-year sentence. The third-degree murder, again, is about creating something called a depraved mind, where you put others in a situation where they're facing imminent danger and you're responsible for putting them in that situation. That would carry with it a lesser maximum sentence of 25 years. And then that second-degree manslaughter, which would require even less, a lower standard of showing culpable negligence, that carries with it a maximum of 10 years and I believe a fine of not more than $20,000. So you typically just kind of go down the line, second degree murder being the most difficult, then third degree murder, and then easier again for the prosecution, third degree manslaughter.
And then is it typical, though, to have 3 charges relating to the one act? Because it's sort of like, well, which is it? Was it second-degree murder? Was it third-degree murder? Was it second-degree manslaughter? Or can it be all 3 at the same time?
Yes, you can have more than one charge, absolutely. And it gives the jurors options. It gives the jurors options if they feel like, you know what, the prosecution was not able to reach that threshold of second degree murder, but we do think that they were able to prove, let's say, third degree murder or second degree manslaughter. And some of the charges can be things called lesser included. So once you prove, for instance, second degree murder, then in some jurisdictions, that would carry with it lesser included charges of crimes that are easier to prove. So I wouldn't want people to take away the idea that it's rare or unusual in any sense to include an array of charges based on the same set of facts.
Okay. And Gloria, do you believe these were the proper charges? Because, of course, there's always some give and take. do you believe that the prosecution, the state did a good job in choosing these 3 charges to be levied against Derek Chauvin?
Well, it was because of the protests from individuals, groups around the country and in Minnesota, working with lawyers who said, why don't you have all of these charges? They would have had fewer. I mean, keep in mind, the reason why we have a special prosecutor in the first place was because the district attorney at the time said that they were going to prosecute, were not going to, because George Floyd died of natural causes. And so it was because the outrage of the people in the community, the videotape, and the people, pundits like myself, who said, what are we doing here? How can you not have any push toward having these criminal charges against this particular officer and the other 3? Because we still have the trial for the other 3. Keep that in mind. It doesn't stop here. And they may plead out, who knows, after what happens here. But I think many people are more focused on what they think is the first-degree murder, which is so difficult, wildly difficult to prove, that too often people focus on that there was intentional murder, that Derek Chauvin actually thought that he was going into this encounter to take the life of George Floyd. But this is nearly impossible sometimes, even with all the evidence, to prove what was going on in someone's head, to prove that was the motivation and malice aforethought. So I think that to that level of first-degree murder. So I think these are varied enough to have enough elements to them that are provable based on the evidence that's been given to the police department and handed over to the prosecutor's office. They made that great case, and I think that they did an extraordinary job. And as I said, I want to see that level of justice in all of these cases involving people who have been assaulted or murdered by police officers. Yes, police officers deserve their justice in court, but they also, and we had a vigorous defense counsel, but we also have to have prosecutors willing to do their jobs, and that means bringing these charges and then following up and zealously executing the law in a way they know they would do if it had been a civilian upon civilian murder.
You're listening to The John Oakley Show on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
All right, we've been listening live to our CBS colleagues, their news feed live from Minneapolis as we await the verdict, the reading of the verdict. It's been rendered, but we're still awaiting the reading, and that is imminent, so we'll pick it up in progress shortly. As they say, coming up to the news in detail in 3 minutes' time. Right now, let's get to Tom at Tom's Place in the heart of Kensington Market. Hello, Thomas.
John Oakley, my most beautiful friend, my buddy of all buddies. Just listening to your voice gives me comfort. I have a very famous gentleman here buying 6 pairs of pants from me. I have a difficulty pronouncing 6, but he's really buying 3 jackets.
And that was the end. The life as I knew it. On April 28th, we remember all those who suffered a workplace death, injury, or illness. Learn more at wsiddaysmorning.ca.
Hello, I am water.
And I am earth, and we are just made for each other.
I come down as rain and hit on earth.
Together we make mud, sweet, beautiful mud.
Some find us challenging.
While all those Subarus with symmetrical full-time all-wheel drive revel in our creation.
Mud, our special gift to the world.
Enjoy Subaru's all-weather drive event with great rates on 2021 Subaru Foresters. Go online to build and price yours and adventure on in all weather.
In downtown Toronto, we have a mostly overcast sky. 5 degrees. We're going down to an overnight low of -1 with some snow. The news watch never stops. 680 News is CFTR AM Toronto. It's 5 o'clock.
We're here now. Drive it to Mr. Luke. Sit back with stay in your
weather. 680 News. Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, April 20th. I'm James Monroe.
All right, Ms. Luciana Timmins, here are the top stories right now.
A Minnesota jury has made a decision on whether to convict Derek Chauvin, the former police officer who faces murder and manslaughter charges in the death of George Floyd.
We are standing by for the reading of the verdict due any second. Hear it here live.
Snow is headed to Toronto and the rest of the GTA, so your morning commute tomorrow could be tricky.
The Jays and the Red Sox open a 2-game series at Fenway Park tonight, and the Maple Leafs trying to snap their losing streak in Vancouver. Sports at 15.
Surging COVID-19 cases globally have investors hitting the sell button. The Dow falls more than 250. Business at 26.
680 News Time, 501.
Traffic weather together on the ones brought to you by Lexus of Richmond Hill Airport. Chopper 680 Jordan Kerr.
A bit of good news. Southbound on the 404, that issue approaching Shepherd has cleared away, but it's really heavy southbound 404 from south of Steeles down towards Shepherd. Northbound on the GBP, gradually getting better. Each report, delays from north of Don Mills to north.
Ontario's science advisors say that the province's hospitals are buckling under the weight of COVID-19 and stronger measures are urgently needed. The Ontario COVID-19 Science Advisory Table says that those measures include accelerating the vaccination of essential workers and offering them paid sick days and closing more non-essential workplaces. The group says hospitals are at capacity and younger people are getting sick as case counts keep hitting record highs. Dr. Peter Uni, the scientific director of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table, explains what can we do as individuals to stay safe?
Clearly distinguish between indoors and outdoors. Forget about being indoors with other people or not part of your household. If you have to be indoors, like in a supermarket, always wear a mask. Be there as little as possible and then go out again. Period. Very simple.
Ontario set another record for hospitalizations today, and Premier Doug Ford's government is facing widespread criticism for its handling of the pandemic. And now Toronto Public Health is following suit with Peel Region and ordering some businesses to temporarily close to help manage the COVID-19.
Day with a high of 4 degrees and afternoon sunny breaks. And winter weather travel advisory is in effect. It's currently 4 degrees at Pearson. 680 News Time, 502.
With breaking news from Minneapolis, a verdict has been reached in the trial of a former police officer, Derek Chauvin, accused. Decision set to be read imminently. Here at Here Live.
680's Karen Seolan is watching and joins us live with the latest. Karen.
Yes, so Jen, a historic moment for America and really for the world right now, with a verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial coming down at any moment. Chauvin faces second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter charges. The most serious charge, second-degree murder, could carry a sentence as high as 40 years. The girlfriend of the late George Floyd just told reporters she's confident Chauvin will be convicted of murder, saying guilty verdicts would make Minnesota the epicenter for change.
I think it'll mean change. It's the first step in a long road to recovery. We have a lot of work to do in Minneapolis, but I believe Floyd came here for a reason. This is a sacred land, and we need to start respecting that again. And I know that is what he would want.
A racially diverse jury of 12 deliberated for about 10 hours over the past 2 days. Now, a crowd is growing outside of the courtroom where the jury's verdict again is about to be read any minute now. The eyes of the nation are on Minneapolis to see if the city will burst into celebration or perhaps explode into anger. Now, this moment and its implications so momentous, President Joe Biden will reportedly address the nation tonight. Again, a verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial coming any minute. Keep it locked on 680 News. We will carry it live. Reporting live, I'm Karen Seolan.
On the Weather Watch, moving from April showers to April flurries. Environment Canada would
Never have seen the light of day without the video, as police aren't forced to fill out a report when no major injuries are sustained or a taser or firearm used. The officer in question has been put on desk duty while the investigation is ongoing. Dave Woodard, Global News.
Rogers Communications is offering customers a credit after a massive nationwide wireless outage left millions without voice calls, texting, and data service for several hours on Monday. The company says a credit equivalent to Monday's wireless service fee will be applied to a future bill. Rogers says the credit will be done automatically and no action is required by customers.
1 day's
limit the snowfall amounts that are going to be actually on the ground in Toronto. I've got a lot of dry air in place, so the system is just grazing us to the south, but it's fighting with this dry air to the north. So that's why we're talking about trace to nil.
With breaking news, let's go to the courts in Minneapolis.
Be seated and you have Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict 646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Are these your verdicts, so say you one, so say you all?
Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So, all rise for the jury.
This just in, the 680 News from the courts in Minneapolis. The verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial for the death of George Floyd has just been read. Guilty on all counts. Jury of 5 men and 7 women finding him guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of third-degree murder, and guilty of second-degree manslaughter. Stay with 680 for full coverage straight ahead. This is 680 News.
This is 680 News.
This is Superfan Napatia. You see me driving a lot of SUVs, but I have fallen in love with the new Genesis GV80. The only seat that can compare to my courtside seat is behind the wheel of my new luxury SUV by Genesis. But there is very limited availability. The official car of the Superfan. Book your appointment at genesismississauga.ca. Don't miss the hottest SUV, the Genesis GV80.
Now, 680 News.
Jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back, and I will join you to answer questions and to advise you further. So, all rise for the jury. All right, be seated. With the guilty verdicts returned, we're going to have Blakely, you may file a written argument as to Blakely factors within 1 week. The court will issue findings on the Blakely factors, the factual findings, 1 week after that. We'll order a PSI immediately, returnable in 4 weeks.
And we will also have a briefing on, after you get the PSI, 6 weeks from now, and then 8 weeks from now, we will have sentencing. We'll get you the exact dates in a scheduling order. Is there a motion on behalf of the state?
They would move to have the court revoke the defendant's bail and remand him into custody pending sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further?
All right.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
So, counsel, case, all everybody.
This is the John Oakley Show on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
All right, flurries now downtown.
Welcome back.
Toronto. We're
Well,
looking
you just heard it live in Minneapolis. 3 counts, all guilty for Derek Chauvin, second-degree murder, third-degree, and second-degree manslaughter. The sentence will be rendered 8 weeks from now. They've revoked his bail, so he's been taken into custody, and that's that. Now, pending any prospects of an appeal, who knows if that's going any further, but there were people who are, I think, rejoicing to a certain extent based upon the verdicts having just been read, feeling that justice has been done and seen to be done in the case of Derek Chauvin. It is a case that obviously had been fraught with all kinds of emotionalism and greater implications for race relations in America and beyond. And so this is the outcome from that particular case, every juror being questioned by the judge individually as to whether or not they could ascertain that that was their true intent to render the guilty verdict, and all in the affirmative. So that's the American justice system.